NFL Nation reporters assess the biggest injuries across the league for Week 8. AFC East, AFC North, AFC South, AFC West, NFC East, NFC North, NFC South, NFC West, AFC East. Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's secondary could be without two starters for Sunday's game against the Raiders, who gained 417 receiving yards last week against Kansas City. Safety Jordan Poyer knee and cornerback E.J. Gaines' hamstring are both considered day-to-day, but they did not practice Wednesday. If they can't go, expect the Bills to start Trey Elston at safety and Sherry's Wright at cornerback. Buffalo has allowed 350 passing yards per game since Week 5, the most in the NFL. Mike Rodak. Miami Dolphins quarterback Jay Cutler suffered multiple rib fractures last week and is not expected to play Thursday night against the Ravens. Backup Matt Moore likely will get his first start of the season, while Cutler will get 10 days to rest before Miami's next game. James Walker. Can the Saints create more separation in the NFC South? Are the Chargers or Dolphins for real? Which fantasy running back should you consider benching? Our experts weigh in. With Carson Palmer out for an extended period, it's natural to wonder if the Cardinals should sign Colin Kaepernick. Let's break down the situation. New England Patriots linebacker Donta Hightower's shoulder was knocked out of Sunday's win over the Falcons in the third quarter and wasn't at practice Wednesday, which could put his status in question for Sunday. The Boston Herald reported, citing sources, that Hightower won't play this week. His presence on defense has settled things down for others, so it would be a significant loss. With the bye week after Sunday's game, that could also factor into the decision-making process for the Patriots, with some injured players, which includes wide receiver Danny Amendola knee and defensive tackle Malcolm Brown ankle. Mike Rice. New York Jets cornerback Buster Skrine is dealing with his third concussion in the past 2 years. Assuming he doesn't play Sunday, the secondary will be unsettled against Julio Jones Co. Skrine is the only experienced slot corner on the roster. Chances are they'll use Darryl Roberts in the slot, with Morris Claiborne and the seldom-used Justin Burris on the outside. Rich Cimini. AFC North. Baltimore Ravens. It looks like the Ravens will get back two receivers in Jeremy Maclin shoulder and Breshad Perriman concussion for Thursday night against the Dolphins. Maclin wasn't wearing a red non-contact jersey for the first time in 3 weeks, and Perriman was a full participant in Wednesday's practice. There's more uncertainty with wide receiver Mike Wallace, who has been limited in practice after suffering a concussion last Sunday. Jamison Hensley. Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals look like they're finally getting wide receiver John Ross back after he practiced fully Wednesday, but they could be down two others after Tyler Boyd knee and Cody Core concussion missed practice. Linebacker Kevin Minter is also a question after missing practice with an elbow injury, although coach Marvin Lewis said Minter will not need surgery. Catherine Terrell. Cleveland Browns. The beleaguered Browns followed up the loss of Pro Bowl left tackle Joe Thomas' ruptured triceps tendon with the announcement that 2016 first overall pick Myles Garrett has a concussion. With the team leaving for London on Thursday night, it's possible Garrett doesn't even make the trip. That will be decided in the next 24 hours. Pat McManam on Pittsburgh Steelers. Juju Smith-Schuster. Concussion is crucial to the game plan with Martavis Bryant out, and though he practiced in full Wednesday, he must clear the final stages of the protocol to play in Detroit. Smith-Schuster said he's not feeling any ill effects, so clearance might be a matter of time. The Steelers are still waiting on right tackle Marcus Gilbert hamstring to perk up. Jeremy Fowler. AFC South. Houston Texans cornerback Kevin Johnson said his goal is to play against the Seahawks. The starting cornerback has missed 4 games with a sprained MCL. Left tackle Chris Clark is sidelined with a calf injury, but coach Bill O'Brien said Clark is day-to-day more than week-to-week. Dwayne Brown, who returned Monday from his season-long holdout, could play Sunday in Clark's place. Sarah Barshop. Indianapolis Colts linebacker John Simon has been the Colts' best defensive player this season. But coach Chuck Pagano said it's unlikely that Simon will play against Cincinnati on Sunday because of a stinger in his neck. Pagano made it sound like Simon could miss more than one game after he suffered the injury against Jacksonville last weekend. Simon has a team-high 3 sacks to go with an interception that he returned for a touchdown. Mike Wells. Jacksonville Jaguars. The bye week comes at a perfect time for the Jaguars because left tackle Cam Robinson is dealing with a sprained ankle and he would be unlikely to play if the Jaguars had a game this weekend. Running back Leonard Fournette ankle and center Brandon Linder illness, who both didn't play last week, are hopeful to be cleared to return for the Jaguars game on November 5 against Cincinnati. Mike Tiraco. Tennessee Titans. The Titans will use their bye week to get several of their injured stars: quarterback Marcus Mariota, running back DeMarco Murray, wide receiver Corey Davis, and tight end Delanie Walker closer to 100%. Davis has a good chance of returning Week 9 against Baltimore after missing the past 5 games with a hamstring injury. Walker will be the injury to watch, as it's uncertain whether he'll miss time with the right ankle bone bruise that appeared worse when he hurt it than it turned out to be. Getting Murray and Mariota off their hamstrings for a week should help in the long term. Cameron Wolfe. AFC West. Denver Broncos offensive tackle Menelik Watson, who missed last week's loss to the Chargers with a calf injury, returned Wednesday and took part in what coach Vance Joseph called a jaw-through, given it's an extra practice this week since the Broncos play in Kansas City on Monday night. Both Watson and his backup, Donald Stevenson, missed the shutout to Los Angeles, and as a result the Broncos played Alan Barber, who had been splitting time at guard and right tackle. Both Barber and left tackle Garrett Bowles had difficult days against the Chargers' Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. Watson has had some struggles in pass protection this season, but his work in the run game has been a key part of Denver's success running the ball over their first 4 games. Jeff Legwold. Kansas City Chiefs starting cornerback Steven Nelson, who hasn't played all season after having core muscle surgery, returned to practice this week, giving him a chance to play against the Broncos on Monday night. Nelson's return would be welcomed by the Chiefs, who have struggled defensively most of the season. If Nelson starts, the Chiefs could move Terrence Mitchell to third cornerback, a role he excelled in last season. But Mitchell has given up a lot of plays as the starter. They could also move Philip Gaines, who is struggling as the third cornerback, to the bench. Adam Tyker. Los Angeles Chargers starting right tackle Joe Barksdale is playing with a painful turf toe injury for the duration of this season and was unable to play last week against the Broncos. Barksdale has missed 2 games this year because of the foot issue, and Rivers has been sacked 5 times in those games. Pass blocking is Barksdale's strength, and the Chargers could use the LSU product this week when they hit the road to face the Patriots in the team's final game before the bye. Coach Anthony Lynn said Barksdale will be limited in practice this week. Eric D. Williams. Oakland Raiders cornerback David Emerson has had a rough go of it thus far this season and injured his right foot against Kansas City last Thursday night after being targeted 4 times in 18 coverage snaps against the Chiefs, and allowing 4 receptions for 109 yards and a touchdown, per Pro Football Focus. And yet, he is Oakland's best cornerback, and he missed practice on Wednesday and was seen Tuesday still walking with a limp. An injured Emerson means more Sean Smith, who lost his starting gig earlier this season, for better or worse. Paul Gutierrez. NFC East. Dallas Cowboys with a large lead. The Cowboys pulled linebacker Sean Lee from the final moments of last week's game against San Francisco because of a quadriceps bruise and expected him to be limited in Wednesday's full padded workout. Instead, Lee was able to go through a full workout without any issues, which is a good sign for Sunday's game against Washington. Left tackle Tyron Smith didn't practice because of back tightness, which has troubled him for the past 3 weeks, but he is also dealing with a slight hip strain. Like Lee, however, he is expected to play against the Redskins. Todd Archer. New York Giants wide receiver Sterling Shepard tweaked his left ankle again late last week, forcing him to miss the loss to the Seahawks. Shepard said he should be fine after the bye when the Giants face the Rams, but he'll have to make it through a full week of practice before they know for sure. The short-handed Giants need him to return. They need any weapon they can get. Jordan Ryan on Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles lost 2 standouts, left tackle Jason Peters and linebacker Jordan Hicks, to season-ending injuries this week. That thrusts tackle Halapoulivaati Vaitai and linebacker Najee Gooden, 2 big roles for the first-place Eagles. Cornerback Ronald Darby dislocated ankle is nearing a return. He was limited to start the practice week. It's to be determined whether he'll suit up Sunday against the 49ers. Tim McManus. Washington Redskins. Washington's offensive line is a mess. 4 starters are dealing with an injury. The Redskins' 2 best linemen, and 2 of their best players, have issues. Left tackle Trent Williams' knee will need surgery at some point and isn't sure whether he'll make it to the end of the season and might sit a week or 2 at some point, while right guard Brandon Scherff suffered a grade 2 MCL sprain of his right knee Monday and might not play Sunday against Dallas. Center Spencer Long knee quad and right tackle Morgan Moses ankles also are hurting. Moses likely will play and Williams has gutted it out the past 2 games, so it wouldn't be surprising at all if he goes, too. But Long and Scherff will be the ones to watch. It's not an ideal situation. John Keim. NFC North. Chicago Bears. The only surprise addition to Wednesday's injury report was Bears guard Kyle Long, who missed practice because of his surgically repaired ankle. However, coach John Fox downplayed the development. "I think Long just needed rest," Fox said. "We've done that a couple times this season, but the key for him is getting to Sunday." The Bears are likely to be without wide receiver Marcus Wheaton groin, linebacker John Temuanklecny, cornerback Sherrick McManus hamstring and linebacker Roy Robertson Harris hamstring when they play at New Orleans on Sunday. Jeff Dickerson, Detroit Lions Golden Tate made a surprising appearance at Lions practice Wednesday, working in individual drills with a shoulder injury requiring a sling less than a week ago. His status at this point is nowhere close to clear for Sunday night against the Steelers, but it's at least a good sign he's able to do some work. Detroit had more good news with Glover Quinn concussion participating in practice fully Wednesday. Barring a setback, his consecutive games played streak should continue. The bigger question is at left tackle, where Greg Robinson ankle and Emmett Cleary ankle both missed practice. If neither one can play, that could leave Brian Mahalik or Bryce Harris as Detroit's potential starting left tackle against Pittsburgh. Mahalik struggled in spot duty against New Orleans and Harris was signed a week ago. Michael Rothstein, Green Bay Packers, sits the bye week for the Packers, so there's no pressing injury concern. Instead, let's look long-term at the prospects for quarterback Aaron Rodgers to come back from his broken right clavicle. The Packers are holding out hope that Rodgers can come back late in the season if they're still in the playoff race. At the earliest, he could play in Week 15 at Carolina. That would be after the 8-week window to return off injured reserve would open. Coach Mike McCarthy said he's been in regular contact with Rodgers since his surgery last week, but added there's a reason why he's on IR. So it's at a minimum of 8 weeks and worst-case scenario he would be lost for the season. Rob Domofsky, Minnesota Vikings coach Mike Zimmer seemed optimistic that the Vikings would get several injured players back this week when they face the Browns in London. Cornerback Mackenzie Alexander hip and guard Nick Easton calf were limited on Wednesday, as was wide receiver Stephon Diggs, who missed the past 2 games. In addition to a groin injury, Diggs was listed with an ankle injury, which is new this week. The offensive line played well against the Ravens despite losing Riley Reiff and Jeremiah Searles to knee injuries, and while Zimmer doesn't think their injuries are serious, Reiff and Searles joined Sam Bradford knee and Stephen Weatherly knee as non-participants on Wednesday. For the first time this season, QB Case Keenum is on the injury report with a chest injury. That'll be an important one to keep an eye on the next 2 days. While Zimmer said all 4 quarterbacks will be in London, it's doubtful Bridgewater would be activated to start if Keenum couldn't go. If that's the case, Minnesota would turn to Kyle Slaughter. Courtney Crone in NFC South Atlanta Falcons. Maybe it's not a huge concern, but running back Tevin Coleman popped up as limited on Wednesday's injury report with a knee issue. It's unclear when Coleman suffered the injury, but anything that affects his ability to explode is worth monitoring. The Falcons haven't fully utilized Coleman as of late, particularly as a pass catcher out of the backfield. We'll see if the knee injury limits his play against the Jets come Sunday. Von Miller Carolina Panthers middle linebacker Luke Kuechly appears on the path to be cleared from the concussion protocol that kept him out of last week's loss to the Bears and set to play on Sunday at Tampa Bay. While the Panthers played lights out defensively against Chicago, the Bucs have the number 2 passing offense in the NFL, and Kuechly adds a level of communication that takes this unit to another level. David Newton New Orleans Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas popped up on the injury report for the first time Wednesday with a knee injury. It's unclear how significant the injury is, since Thomas appeared to finish last week's game healthy and was in attendance for the start of Wednesday's practice. But if he is out or limited, it would be a big blow to the Saints since he is by far their number 1 target in the passing game and commands a ton of attention from opposing defenses. Meanwhile, right guard Larry Warford is expected to miss multiple weeks with an abdomen injury. He is also a significant loss, since he was the Saints' top free agent signing and has played well this year. Luckily it should be a smooth transition to experienced veteran backup Senio Keelmeet. Mike Tripley Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive end Noah Spence is done for the season with a shoulder injury, so that is no longer a question mark for 2017. What is, however, is how the Bucs will handle not having a true speed rusher. They did sign Darryl Tapp, but he's more of a rotational, run-stuffing defensive end. Beyond this year, the concern is how Spence can avoid having these problems. He suffered his 4th shoulder dislocation in about 13 months this past Sunday against the Bills and the 2nd since undergoing surgery this offseason. Jenna Lane NFC West Arizona Cardinals. The bye has come at a good time for the Cardinals, who don't have any significant injuries to worry about on a week-to-week basis. With 2 weeks between games and then 2 games in 4 days followed by another long weekend, Arizona can be very healthy for the home stretch of the season, save for quarterback Carson Palmer and other major injuries. Arizona has a handful of lingering injuries to players like cornerback Patrick Peterson, quad tendon, defensive tackles Corey Peters knee and Robert Nicumdish calf, and running back Andre Ellington quad. Josh Weinfuss. Los Angeles Rams. The Rams' only injury concern during their bye week is center John Sullivan, who tweaked his left knee in last week's win over the Cardinals. "He's like Gumby," Coach Sean McVay said, "so I think he's going to be okay." The Rams are in a relatively good place with this. McVay credited his training staff for helping to avoid some of the soft tissue injuries that creep up, but also added, "We've gotten some luck too, because I think you look at just some of the injuries around the league, and they're unfortunately unavoidable with the collisions and the types of things that do occur." Alden Gonzalez. San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers haven't had a ton of stability this year, but one area where they had managed it through the first 6 weeks was on the offensive line. But the injury bug finally bit there against Dallas as right tackle Trent Brown suffered a concussion and right guard Brandon Fusco is dealing with a biceps injury that coach Kyle Shanahan has said will make him questionable this week. Brown must go through the concussion protocol while Fusco will be day-to-day. If neither can play, the Niners' depth on the offensive line will be tested even more by a strong Philadelphia front. Nick Wagner. Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks are hoping that center Justin Britt can make a quick recovery from the sprained ankle he suffered last week against the Giants. Coach Pete Carroll was non-committal about Britt playing this Sunday against Houston, and said that if he's able to practice at all this week, it could not be until Friday. Britt's absence would be another setback to an offensive line that is already missing Luke Joeckel. Not only is Britt that group's leader and best player, but his backup at center, rookie second-round pick Ethan Pochik, is competing to replace Joeckel at left guard. Continuity has been fleeting along Seattle's offensive line in recent seasons, and not having Britt would further disrupt it. Brady Henderson.